In the great struggle for North America, the land at the forks of the Ohio was more than a strategic prize for France and Britain. It was an ancestral home, and its fate would be decided not just by European armies, but by the shifting loyalties of the powerful Native American tribes who controlled the region. Nations like the Lenape, Shawnee, and Iroquois saw this fertile valley not as a border, but as the heart of their world, and their decisions would ultimately determine the outcome of the conflict. Fort Duquesne stood not only as a French military outpost, but as a vital hub of alliance. The French primarily focused on the lucrative fur trade rather than widespread settlement, had forged strong bonds with the Ohio tribes. Inside the fort's walls, a unique society emerged where French officers bartered muskets, textiles, and other goods with Lenape and Shawnee chiefs. Warriors and soldiers mingled, planned raids together, and relied on one another for survival. This powerful alliance of mutual interest made the fort a formidable barrier to British expansion and a constant threat to its western frontier. However, the British general, John Forbes, knew he could not take the fort by force alone. His predecessor, General Braddock, had learned that lesson at a terrible cost. So, Forbes launched a diplomatic offensive, aiming to dismantle the very foundation of French power in the Ohio Valley. His weapon was a promise, carried by trusted emissaries like the Moravian missionary Christian Frederick Post. In a tense council meeting deep in the forest, Post presented a wampum belt, a traditional symbol of a binding agreement, to the wary Lenape chief Tamaqua and other tribal leaders. The offer, formalized in the Treaty of Easton, was simple, but profound. Britain pledged to prohibit all colonial settlement west of the Allegheny Mountains if the tribes abandoned the French. The British promise worked. For the Ohio tribes, securing their land from the relentless advance of settlers was a far more critical goal than maintaining their alliance with France. The French offered partnership in trade and war, but the British now offered the one thing they truly desired, the preservation of their homeland. One by one, the tribes made peace. Warriors who had once been the eyes and ears of Fort Duquesne began to break camp. As the Lenape and Shawnee quietly withdrew into the woods, the French garrison was suddenly isolated, its numbers drastically diminished, and its strategic advantage erased. The French commander watched them go, understanding that the fort's fate was sealed. On the night of November 24, 1758, facing Forbes's approaching army without his crucial allies, the French commander made a desperate decision. He ordered his men to pack what they could, set charges to the fort's magazines, and abandon the post. The resulting explosion tore through the night, leaving Fort Duquesne a smoldering ruin. The next day, the British vanguard arrived to claim their prize without firing a single shot. They quickly raised their flag over the ashes and began constructing a new, far more massive fortification on the site, which they renamed Fort Pitt. But this seemingly effortless victory came with a heavy cost for those who had made it possible. The British promise to protect native land was quickly and decisively broken. The ink on the Treaty of Easton was barely dry before the new Fort Pitt became a gateway for the very settlers the tribes had sought to stop. Streams of colonists began pouring over the mountains, ignoring the treaty line and claiming ancestral lands as their own. The fall of Fort Duquesne was not an end, but the beginning of a new, desperate chapter in the Native Americans' fight for their homes and their very survival against a tide of expansion that now seemed unstoppable.